Welcome to session 4 on how to navigate life with your adult children. And I'll just tell you all, the word navigate is chosen very, very carefully because sometimes the waters are smooth and sometimes they're rocky and sometimes you're in the middle of a storm. And Jim, in this particular session, we really want to talk about, I think, what people feel the most. And I love this principle. When your grown children violate your values, you can't want it more than they want it. And so we're talking about they're cohabitating. Maybe they have a porn or alcohol or drug addiction, or they've chosen an alternative lifestyle, or they've just said, you know what, your faith, Jesus, forget it. I mean, you call this the cringe factors. Right. What in the world do you mean by you can't want it more than they want it? And help us. I mean, we're on the edge of our seat on this one.
Think you're right, that this is where it gets to. Yeah. And so many parents who really raised their kids in the church, and their kids were, in the youth group and whatnot, they strayed, and they have continued to stray with many of them. And, it's easy to say you can't want it more than they wanted, but of course we want it to go a different way. Yet, I think there's some principles that we can learn from this that can help us navigate it. And it's not a simple thing, because how do you show love and grace in the midst of how do you hold to a biblical worldview that is different than where they're going? Plus, you're also dealing with your own grief.
Yes.
I know when one of our kids bumped, and not in the world's worst way, but Kathy and I said, we should have had him more at youth group for the mission trips instead of going on that vacation, or if we would have prayed together more as a family, or if we put it all on us. And one of the things I say in this case is that really good parents sometimes have kids who make poor choices.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for us to hear as we deal with this. But when someone does this and you can't want it more than they want it, you've got to give them tough love.
Yeah.
Now, tough love, Chip, is not meanness.
Okay.
And I think some people think, we have to be mean, and we start emptying all of our frustration, anger at our kids, but it's not meanness. Tough love is allowing the consequences to take place. I am so sorry you're living that way. I'm so sorry. Let me tell you an illustration.
Okay.
There was a friends of ours, their daughter raised in the church, great people, a wonderful girl, and she went away to the University of Virginia, and she moved in with her boyfriend. Her parents were paying for college, and they went out and said, here's the deal. If you want to live with your boyfriend, you're acting like an adult. So what that means, though, is we're not going to keep paying for this. And she said, but you call yourselves Christians, and I can't believe that you would do this. And, we love each other, and it's a new world, and understand the culture, and, all the things. Right. And they held their ground. Basically, this woman had no money now. And so she figured out how to kind of navigate through school for a little bit. She eventually called back and said, we've broken up. I want to come home and have a conversation with you. And I loved that. So they showed love, but they also had, there's consequences to that. So because you moved in, we're not going to keep paying for school. That's part of the deal. Okay.
And I heard you say something, though, that I think is really important for people to hear is, it wasn't we're going to pay you back now. It's not we're going to, did that?
No.
This wasn't like spiritual ping pong.
No.
You moved in, no more money. This was, we care about you.
Yeah.
You're an adult.
Yeah.
You can make your own decisions.
Right.
Whether it's about your sexuality or education or others. Right. But at our house, we always talked about these two things go together, right?
Right.
Decisions and responsibility. So if you get 100% authority to make all the decisions, you get all the responsibility that goes with it.
No, that's a great point. One of the things we talk about is that you can't bail them out if they make this decision. This is what's tough, especially when you mentioned it. You mentioned addictions and straying from faith and cohabitation, all these things, and there are consequences to that. But the non-bailing out says, I love you so much that I'm not going to enable you to make, poor choices.
Well, I will say, having been a pastor for over 35 years, what you're describing is what people intellectually may agree with, but the average Christian parent is saying, you just don't understand, it's their education and they were on a scholarship, or, I just can't do that. I really love, and, they look, crying and, Dad, you really love me and do you really care? Where do you get the kind of courage? Because my observation as a pastor and the many emails and letters we get, are train wreck after train wreck after train wreck of people bailing their kids out.
Yeah.
And they don't learn, and there's not the consequences. Right. What do you say to that parent who says, okay, I paid for one rehab, nothing's changed, we can't get on the same page even as parents, which is a big one, about what does tough love really look like? How do you help them?
Well, it's hard. And I wish I could say, oh, well, you only do it once. You only pay for that rehab once. And I think sometimes maybe you do pay for it more times. But the mistake we make is we continue to go in that direction. I just don't think that works. When they blow it, I think you say, look, here's what we can do and here's what we can't do. But I don't think it happens in the heat of the moment. I think you try to do it beforehand. Here's what we're going to do. If you choose to live in that lifestyle, then we're not going to pay for this, or we still love you and we still are going to have a relationship with you, but here's what some of those consequences are going to be, and we're not going to bail you out. When they know that doesn't change the direction maybe that moment,
right? But
they at least know that then you kind of say, okay, here's how it is.
I think the getting a grasp of truth and grace.
Yeah.
And there's such a tension. I think of it like one of those telephone poles.
Yeah.
And they have those guide wires that are made out of metal.
Yeah.
And they're planted in. And I think being able to say, I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
You can make that decision. You're an adult.
Right.
To me, Proverbs 14:12 is one my children, both young and old, heard. There is a way that seems right to a man, but the end thereof is death. It's the old King James Version. I memorized it very early. And to be able to put my arm around you and say,
right.
If you want to live with your girlfriend, I mean, the research is that 10 years later, only 1 out of 10 people, even if you marry, will ever be together.
Right.
I'm for you. I love you. But these are the consequences of that decision.
Yeah. I had a woman ask me just last week, what would I do? And it was a situation where a kid had definitely strayed from faith. And I said, does she know what you believe, the daughter? Does she know what you believe? Yes. Does she know how you feel about where she's going and the direction she's going? Yes. Well, then have a relationship with her. If she likes to shop. If your daughter was a son and wanted to go to the ball game, take them to the ball game. Don't be a one-topic parent in this place.
I love the definition of love, because I think love in our days becomes so squishy.
Yeah.
And even in Bible-believing circles, we're seeing a tremendous movement away from some core orthodox, just morality. Well, you just have to love and accept people.
Yeah.
And I think love is giving another person what they need the most when they deserve it the least.
Boy, that's good.
At great personal cost.
Yeah.
When I think of the cross, what I needed the most, forgiveness. When I deserve it the least, I was rebelling. I was an enemy of God at great personal cost. And I think sometimes the cost is us as parents. There's a distance in the relationship. I've got a very close friend whose daughter entered the gay and lesbian lifestyle, and you don't love me, and why aren't you doing this, and why are you doing that? And he said as kindly as he could, who moved? Okay, I love you. And he took initiative, and he cared and did all that he could. But unless he would agree with her lifestyle for a season, she cut him out. And it's really challenging. Sometimes tough love, it's harder on us than it is on the person.
Yeah, and we really do. We need support and counsel and wisdom. The Bible says where there's no counsel, the people fall, and the multitude of counselors are a safety. And I really suggest to any parent who's going through that to get the kind of counsel and wisdom. And then, this sounds simplistic, and yet it's so important. I think we have to relinquish our children to God.
Yes.
And I pray this prayer in fact, I did it just the other day. I don't do it every day, but I said, I release and relinquish my children to your loving care and your tender mercies, because you love them more than I do. And I still don't understand that, because I love my kids so much. But, God's presence in their life is going to be what's going to help them, whatever those issues are.
And I would say this may sound trite, but one of our children went through a pretty significant time of rebellion that just broke our heart. And prayer. Proverbs 21:1 says, the king's heart is like channels of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it whatever we wish. And to honestly believe, and we prayed and we fasted, to think that I can talk to God and God get into the heart of my son or my daughter in the midst of whatever, and then how do we love them in every way possible without condoning that behavior or that lifestyle? And you keep as many doors open, and you are that prodigal father waiting, and yet you keep the consequences. And I think that's where parents often cave in and actually end up enabling the very thing, because they don't like the feeling of being called unloving or the distance with their child.
Exactly.
I don't know where you're at, but I can only imagine that you or someone you love knows someone, if it's not you, that has a grown adult child whose lifestyle, whose faith, or one of these cringe issues is a part of their life. Let me encourage you, don't give up on them. Let me encourage you, don't be all love and no truth. And let me encourage you, don't be all truth and no love. Build a relationship where possible, dig into these questions, and then ask God to change their heart. And you keep living the kind of life that they can respect. And we'll trust God with the results.